My workshop is a disorganized orgy of randomly scattered sandpaper sheets, or so it seems to me sometimes. There's more of it, and there's piles of it other places. I never can find it when I want, so I go out and buy some more, and then I discover I had a bunch of it. Needs to be organized. I recently unearthed these from a dark corner of my shop, covered with dead bugs and other stuff, and this one had gotten wet on the bottom at some flood at some point. They're not pretty. I used to use these in an earlier part of my career in my office to carry or to hold all of the Bishop graphics, which was before people did printed circuit board layouts on computers. You usually used Bishop graphics, and they had precise colored tapes for different layers of the board, and pads of all sizes, and lettering, and you just laid everything out on Mylar sheets. Usually at 2-to-1 or 4-to-1. I did 2-to-1, and then sent it off to be manufactured, and I kept everything in there. Most of the labels have fallen off, but I had, you know, one that had some of the rolls of tape in it, and donuts, which is probably some of the pads, and printed circuit board edge connector fingers and things like that, and they all just fit in these. Kind of cheap, but functional. Yeah, that's what the color used to be before it faded from exposure. And at some point I taped these together hastily with crappy packing tape, which is just about disintegrated. It's just falling apart. And I got the idea that instead of making a set of drawers or something, these are exactly the right size to put sheets of sandpaper in. The normal size that these come in fit precisely into these, with just enough space around them that you can get a fingernail under the edge to lift them up. So if I were to clean these up, maybe give them a shot of paint on the outside and on the front of the drawers, they might be fairly presentable. Well, that's yesterday's batch of drawer frames and a couple of tops that sat in the bath and got scrubbed, and then tonight I came down with a razor blade and some sandpaper and mineral spirits and isopropyl alcohol and scraped away any remaining residue from the tape and stuff, and sanded some rough spots, wiped it down with mineral spirits to get rid of the rest of the adhesive, and then went over the whole thing with isopropyl to get rid of the mineral spirits and even things out. And then following that I did another batch, slightly smaller batch. You can see they're still wet, so these will dry overnight, and then I'll hit them with the same treatment I gave those guys. Then all I have to do is deal with these absolutely grungy drawers, bug encrusted drawers, and give them the same kind of treatment, and this might actually turn out acceptable. Alright, all the drawers are washed, but you can't get rid of all the stains and discoloration. I'm definitely going to have to shoot the fronts of the drawers with paint, and the outsides of the drawer casings, or whatever you're calling these, the shelves or whatever. I don't know if I'll bother with the sliding surfaces. That's probably not too smart, but certainly the parts that will show. Meanwhile, this coming weekend is going to see a bunch of activity on this Heathkit IM16 that I'm starting another video on. I've been ordering parts, and they've been coming in, the parts I know I'm going to have to replace. And I have to fix my utility sink again. it's become apparent to me. I just replaced the faucet assembly on here, and it turns out it has a crack in it underneath, and it's dribbling water on the floor constantly. Not a lot, but enough to keep it moist. And I've got a replacement coming that might be here by the weekend, so I'll have to do that and then try it out when I'm soaking all the Heathkit parts to get the dirt off of them. And in between that activity, maybe I'll do some spray painting over here. One of the few cases where I can actually get outdoors to do painting instead of trying to do it in my basement. Got a couple of sawhorses set up with a board across them, some protective paper, and some Rust-Oleum gloss enamel, sail blue. It's about the closest I could find, and it's not really a close match, but I'm not concerned with that. I just want to get a reasonable blue color on the fronts of these. After a final wipe off with isopropyl alcohol, I'm ready to start shooting the shelves themselves, whatever we're calling these things. And for this I'm going to use Rust-Oleum gloss protective enamel, smoke gray. While I'm shaking my paint and no doubt the camera, just a quick look around my garage. The only time I've shown this before has been in my COVID lockdown video on my Mark's train set, and it was cleaned out for that, but I just got a new delivery from Uline, a lot of bubble wrap that I use for packing things I sell on eBay, one of my high wheel bikes, my Catrike Road that I use for most of my cycling. I've got my fuel transfer pump up there on that stand, my generator that's powerful enough to run my house, except for the air conditioning, and a couple of my Raycor lifts that I have a YouTube video on, and my air compressor back there, Husky air compressor that I have a video on. One of my car carriers for transporting high wheel bikes on the receiver hitch of my car. My Cobalt air transfer tank that I have a video on. My trusty Toro mulching mower. More of my fuel transfer system that I have a video on. My excellent Aaron's snowblower, which I have in at least one video. Another high wheel bike. I'm using this one primarily for appearances where the audience or the crowd or whoever wants to get up closer to the bike, because it's the better looking one, and the other bike is the one I mostly use when I do parades and things, of which I do quite a few in the summer months. And my Gorilla, or Gorilla cart that I have a video on. Back in the corner. I think I might have done a video on the carrier back there I used to transport my snowblower, but maybe that was an Amazon review, I don't know. And I've got my folded up utility trailer in the back there with both the solid and the slat sides. Alright, back to the painting. Alright, all of those are painted now, plus one of the covers and two more of the covers up here. This stuff is supposed to be dry enough after 10 minutes to be handled, but I'm going to give it at least an hour. I'm trying to decide if I can risk mowing my lawn. It's not windy enough to really blow any clippings over in this direction, so probably I'll do that. Okay, here's this big package of 100 pieces magnetic L-8 board. I think that's supposed to be white board, I don't know. Or right board, 1 by 2 inches, made in China. Paraphrase what they said in Back to the Future. All the best everything, well, just everything is made in China. So they do seem rather magnetic. They'll hold themselves up, but unfortunately my plastic drawers are not magnetic. So I'm going to have to use some sort of adhesive to attach these to the fronts of the drawers. I've taken all of the sandpaper I found and organized it by grit, and it comes to 9 different grits, which is probably adequate for my needs. I probably don't need to get anything in between. I also have some Scotch-Brite pads that have need of a home, and since they're abrasive, I think I'll consider them to be sandpaper. And then I have these flat foam sponge sheets, which also need a home, and as they're of the correct size, I'll give them a drawer position. The nice thing about this with these holders is I don't have to permanently mark the drawers. If I decide to reshuffle things and group all the grits, you know, less than 200 in one drawer and that type of thing, I can do it later on. But the other thing I have to do is I can potentially have as many as 3 stacks of drawers, because I have 3 of these covers that can go on top of a stack. So I also have to just measure where on my shelves I have enough room to stack these and how tall it'll be. But I think first things first, we've got to get these labels made up and find a way to affix the label holders to the drawers. My first thought was just to glue a couple of neodymium magnets on the inside of the drawers with epoxy, and then that would give plenty of grip to these through the plastic. So I may try that out, see if I have enough neodymiums to do it that way. And if that doesn't work, then I probably can just use some epoxy to glue these on. I kind of like the magnet idea better, though, if it holds it firmly. Well, it turns out these magnets, even though on a large surface area have enough grip to hold their own weight, they don't have enough grip through the plastic to just barely more than hold themselves on. Even with 2 magnets stacked, they would fall off every time I open the drawers. So adhesive it's going to be. Alright, everything's epoxied and put in position to the label maker. Alright, there's enough room on my shelving here to stack all 11 up and put one cover on the top, but that cover seems a little more bowed than some of them, and that might cause a problem. Wonder if any of these other ones are a little straighter. I'll have to check that out. Nope, they're all equally warped. I'll just have to live with it. And I've got all my repainted and label holdered drawers here. And as mentioned earlier, I didn't repaint the whole things. I just painted the part that was going to show. Alright, there's the assembled drawer unit. Oops, a little something stuck to it there. Looks way better than it did before, all grody and bug dropping covered and water stained and UV faded and everything. It's a fairly handsome unit now. Too bad the dusty shelf it's on isn't clean. So now I just have to put in the labels I made. So I made these on my Brother TZ label maker. These are 1 inch and 1 inch wide, and the holders actually are 1 inch wide, but the internal dimensions are slightly less. So I had to put these on my paper shear and just take off, I don't know what it was, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. You can maybe see that the lettering seems just a little high on the label. That's because of the part I had to shear off. Okay. Anything 80 or less in numerical grit. 100s, 120s, 150s, 180s, anything from 200 to 300. Anything from 300 to less than 400. This really should have said less than 300, but it's okay. 400 to less than 600, 600 or greater than Scotch-Brite, than the flat sponge sheets. Alright, project finished. I start with my flat sponge sheets, then my couple of grades of Scotch-Brite, medium and fine, anything with a number higher than 600, and I have them facing down. I find that when I'm trying to grab them, as I lift a corner and then can get my thumb on the abrasive side, it works better than when it's the other way around. Plus I can see the numbers easier. Anywhere between 400 and up to 600, 300 up to 400, 200 up to 300, 180, oops, there we go, 150, 120, and for this I only have it in small sizes for sanding blocks. 100, both large sheets and small pads of it. And then 80, same thing, full size and small pads. And I have to lift the edge of the lid up slightly to get the top drawer to close all the way. Not a big deal.